Live from the Widecast studios in downtown Peoria, it's another edition of Scott Wheeler's Airplay. This is episode number 35, airing right now on Peoria Life's Facebook page, Facebook Live, also on YouTube. And then a little later today, you can catch it on Peoria TV channel 17, the i3 broadband system, and all over social media. I will share it as well. I'm Scott Wheeler from Super Hits WIRL. Airplay, all about going behind the scenes and getting to know some of the folks you watch on television or listen to on the radio and find out a little more about their lives off the camera, off the mic. Now, I'm pretty excited about today's guest because most people I have a prior background with or a relationship, and I know a little bit about them. But today's guest, I'm getting to know for the first time, and you're going to join us in getting to know her too. It's Lauren Melendez from News 25, my guest today on Airplay.
Hello.
Welcome. I am so excited to get to know you because I've admired your work for a couple of years now, and I'm like, I got to get her on Airplay. I want to see what makes this girl tick.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
So I know you're from Philly.
I am.
Okay, so I got to ask you, and I know you're going through all sorts of diet stuff right now, so I don't want to tempt you.
Right.
What does make the perfect Philly cheesesteak?
Okay, well, if you ask like my family, it's cheese whiz, peppers and onions, obviously the steak. I'm not a big fan of the whiz.
I was going to say that you got me right there.
I'm not. Some people do like provolone, but let me tell you, there is no other Philly cheesesteak other than Philly. So if you go to New York and you get a Philly cheesesteak, you will be disappointed.
Yeah, it's kind of like trying to do Chicago pizza.
Exactly. You guys have, Illinois has pizza. We have cheesesteaks.
So if I go to Philly, and I love Philadelphia because of the music scene.
Oh yeah, it's awesome.
Where do I go for the best Philly cheesesteak?
There's a few. You can go to Jim's or Ishkabibbles. Always go to South Street.
Okay.
They'll tell you Pat's or Gino's. That's like the touristy spot. You don't want to go. I mean, they're not bad.
See, this is why I'm asking a native
We will
Philadelphian.
take you to like a little hole in the wall where somebody's grandfather is back there, like,
that's what I want. Ishkabibbles.
Ishkabibbles. No, it's fantastic. Yeah, it's awesome.
So how long did you live in Philadelphia?
I grew up there.
Okay.
So from a little girl until college age, I left for school. And yeah, it's my hometown, West Philly.
So when did you first get the itch to be a journalist?
Oh, okay. So probably around 12 or 13.
Really?
I think initially I wanted to be a model, and then I knew I liked eating too much and I was too short. So that
Philly cheesesteak.
that wasn't realistic. And I was always in everyone's business. Like my parents, when parents go, this is grown folks' business, or, I was always interrupting and asking questions. At one point I had a little pad that I would just write down what people said. And then, as I got older, I sort of realized that there's a way I can make money off that. And it was, storytelling and just having that natural curiosity. I found that journalism was sort of the perfect marriage of all that. Yeah.
I found there's a lot of people who like to write, and I think writing is kind of the basis for all communication, but they don't necessarily make good journalists. What is it, the curiosity factor that in addition to the writing ability that really makes a good journalist?
It's the curiosity, but you also have to be a people person. There are people who are fantastic writers and just want to sit down and do that. You have to be, I have to go and stick a mic in someone's face on their worst day. You have to be comfortable with people. You're like a glorified solicitor or, like a salesman, because you got to try to, get people to want to talk to you on their schedules. They're busy. You have to be comfortable with people telling you no and flipping you off. So, being curious, being willing to do research. People think you jump on TV and you just look pretty. There's a lot of research, a lot of reading, a lot of writing. It's like college times 2,000. So if, it's like I said, that's the perfect marriage of, curiosity, having a background and, loving to read and new information. You just have to be sort of into all of it. Yeah.
So speaking of college, you went to Syracuse.
I did. Orangeman.
Now, I almost went to Syracuse.
Did you?
I looked at 3 schools,
Okay.
Michigan State, Syracuse, and visited them all, and Bradley, and I almost went to Syracuse.
Well, why didn't you?
It just seemed far. Well, I'll tell you the real reason, because I thought I could get a job here in Peoria. But what an outstanding program, as I remember it. Now, that was a long time ago, but obviously you chose it for certain reasons.
Right.
What attracted you to
So ironically, I went there for undergrad and grad. So I have my master's and my bachelor's from Syracuse. And the undergrad was last minute. I made the decision, I think, before like a week before classes started. And I just showed up. It was interesting. My father and I, my parents, we were just shopping. Who's going to give us the most money? And we just said, okay, Syracuse it is. And then I graduated with 3 degrees. I'm a little bit of a nerd. And I realized I don't have the technical training because I didn't actually go to Newhouse. I was in a communications program, but not broadcast. And so I spent another several $1,000s to go to grad school there. And I did the Newhouse broadcast digital journalism program, which is fantastic. They accept like 20 kids a year.
Wow.
And so that worked out really well.
So it seems kind of obvious, but what is digital journalism and why is that so critical now? Why did you add that to your study?
It's not that obvious. I think we think so. Digital is the new media now. Like, we're live on YouTube. Everyone is live on Facebook. I call us a popcorn microwavable society. We like to get our information like that.
Yes, ma'am.
And so if as media outlets and platforms, if we're not sort of keeping up with the times, we're going to lose our audience. And nowadays, people are multitasking. They're cooking, bouncing their kid, watching the news, driving to work. And so that digital platform is it sort of bridges the gap between people who traditionally like to sit down over dinner or maybe, watch a 30-minute newscast, people who have that sort of time versus people who still want to know what's happening, but maybe like to, do it electronically, go online, read a couple headlines and be on their way. Yeah. And so you have to be technically trained to do that as well.
So you're actually I know a lot of folks in radio and television and newspaper have kind of morphed into having to do it.
Yeah.
You're the first person I've met that actually is degreed in it and has a specialty in it. So I want to tap into how it is different than traditional reporting. What are the challenges? What are the differences on your end of things? I understand the end user. It's different from the person who wants to sit down and the person who's really busy. But how is it different for you?
It's a lot more stressful because, you don't just come to work and prepare to put together a story that airs at 5 and 6. Now, the digital platform is I've got to put a tweet up that teases to it coming up at 6. And then maybe I've got to, in the middle of shooting a story, I've got to grab my phone and do a quick Facebook blurb. It's also, you have to synthesize information a lot quicker. So I may be covering like city council and there's some huge vote that people don't really know about. It's so, layered. I've got to break that down in like 30 seconds, just tell you what it's about, why you should care, how it'll affect you, and I'm done. And to be able to do that, people think, oh, they can just go on Facebook. Anyone can be a journalist. That takes skill to be able to know what you're talking about, to understand who your audience is, to be able to speak in a way that engages them in 30 seconds and makes them want to come back in 4 hours and watch the live broadcast on air. Yeah.
And understanding the platforms.
And understand, exactly.
They all, Facebook, Twitter, they all have their unique algorithms.
Exactly.
And working through those and with those and when's the best time to post.
Right, exactly. Prime time on, people aren't up at 6 a.m. Well, some are, so sometimes I'll type up a web story, but I won't schedule it to post on our Facebook page until the next morning because I know that's when parents are up. And it's about, a school bus issue or something that has to do with the school board. I'm not going to post a top story that I've been working on all day at like 11:45 p.m. No one's going to see it. So we're always thinking about viewership. We're always thinking about, who's going to care about this? What part of our target audience does this impact? Yeah.
So after Syracuse, where was your first job?
So I actually stayed at Syracuse, and sort of while I was looking for a job, I worked in the Office of Disability Studies. I was one of the directors. So it was unique. It was, one of those, in-between jobs, and I found a passion. And so that was interesting. It took me quite a while because I took some time off. After grad school, I said, to hell with this. I'm tired, I mean, my master's program was pretty accelerated. I got my master's degree in 13 months. And it was fantastic. But when I tell you, learning from scratch, it was draining. And so I decided, I just want to chill.
I don't blame you.
Yeah, I just want to relax. But that was my first job. And then after that, it was here. Peoria is my first on-air paid position. I was, for our capstone, which is like our final project, I actually reported on Capitol Hill. So I was hanging out with the big dogs,
Great
talking
experience.
to, yeah. So we were positioned or paired with different stations across the country. I was with one in Sioux City, Iowa, KCAU. And so I'd have to go and talk to state representatives, congressmen from Iowa, put together stories that impacted people in Iowa, but that were happening on Capitol Hill.
What about Capitol Hill was the biggest surprise that we just don't see? Is it the pace? Is it the old boy network? What is it?
You know what I think is that there's a bill for everything, and so you think that it's like, oh my God, this is groundbreaking, but there's always something being worked on, and so having to literally read maybe 30 pages of like a bill just to be able to explain to people, okay, how does this Pets for Vets bill impact, veterans in your area was unique. Also, Capitol Hill is just, the buildings, the house, it's just, you're underground and you're just like walking past these people and they don't your journalists live there. They have a whole section, parts of the building for us. And so I think I was a little starstruck. I was like, oh my God, that's a congressman. That's that's Steve King. Like, oh, wow. And I have to do an interview and they're just like, hi, what time are you ready? I think it's just that's their day job. It's business as usual for them. They're just policymakers.
So then to Peoria, and did you feel like you were coming to a foreign land?
Yes, I thought so. I hadn't heard of Peoria, and I thought that there were going to be like tumbleweeds, and I was nervous. I'm a city girl, so I will admit I was a little nervous. And then I actually met Greg Batten and Yvonne, and they're like my adopted parents.
Nice,
and so I
good choice.
Yeah, they're great people. And so they were like, no, we've got indoor plumbing, and we've got all sorts of things here for you. We've got a mall, a Chipotle. No, when I got here, it was really incredible. It was nothing like I expected, but better. I fell right in, and I will say Peoria embraced me right away. It could have been tragically different. So I'm very grateful that you all have, welcomed me, trusted me to tell your stories. But it's been fine. Yeah. And Chicago's up the road, so when I get that itch to like be in a bunch of traffic and cars honking, I can just go to Chicago.
Were you hired specifically because of your digital expertise, or it just was a bonus?
No, I'd like to think that was part of it. I was originally hired as an MMJ, which is like the new title now. Before it was reporter, you had a photog. Now MMJ is a multimedia journalist. You are doing everything. You drive the car. You get out with the gear. I think sometimes I show up and people are like waiting for the rest of my crew. Yeah. And I'm like, sorry to disappoint. It's just me. I've got the camera light and the microphone. I'm hooking things up. And we do have photographers, but they're sort of journalists too. So, I certainly think that I was an attractive candidate because I brought a little bit of a unique expertise to the field. But I just like to think I was qualified.
We're getting to know Lauren Melendez from News 25, I think one of the rising stars in local television here. And so I wanted to get to know her before she ends up anchoring in Philadelphia or something. So I feel like, and maybe it's just unique to the time, but I feel like at News 25 especially, and I would say other sources as well, there is an especially strong crew of female journalists.
Yeah.
And it seems like there are more now, and again, I may be wrong here, more female reporters, journalists, MMJs than male. I think at your place you've got Caitlin and yourself and
we've got
Stephanie and
we have another Caitlin.
It just seems like a really strong crew. Am I picking up on something?
No,
or is that real?
You are.
Okay.
No, I love it because just as strong as our male reporters are and as dedicated, we have a fantastic pod of female journalists there. And aside from just female, we're diverse in so many other ways. In terms of education, experience in the business, background, where we're from across the country. So I brag, and I tell people where I work because we're like a rainbow. We've got almost every shade, background, socioeconomic, and it makes for better journalism. I'm not just saying that. We'll be at the table debating. I'll go, no, this is important to Black people. Somebody will say this is important to Latinos, or this is important to whomever. And it's always healthy. And I don't think you can get that when everyone looks the same, or is the same gender or race, et cetera. Yeah.
Have you been doing this not long enough to note just a general shift in,
Yeah.
it's no secret that media outlets have been white male driven,
Right.
and that diversity is starting to happen. Did you come into it, or have you noticed a change even in your young career?
Well, it's definitely shifted since I've been in journalism. Professionally, I've only been been a reporter anchor for 2.5 years. I've seen shifts, but I like a lot of young journalists actually watch news. I think sometimes people just want to be on TV. And so, doing my professional studies and, learning from other journalists and watching, the 60 Minutes and the different people growing up. A lot of them are white, but they're still good. You know what I mean? I don't think that that's a bad thing. I do appreciate nowadays that news directors and managers recognize the value of, just taking that shift elsewhere, because like I said, there's a beauty and a diversity in culture and background. Certainly since I've been at 25 News, there's been, we've hired more Black anchors, we've hired younger reporters, we've hired our sports anchor on 25 is Asian and Mexican. That's crazy. He's like the best of both worlds. So it's really neat. So certainly since I've been there, but overall, when I turn on the TV or I'm on Instagram and I'm seeing like who's who and who's just gotten hired, I'm like, wow, like she looks like me, So that's heartwarming.
So far, what's been the most impactful story you've covered? Impactful to you, or that you think just made a difference that you will always remember?
Oh, well, probably the death of Jeremiah Ward. That was the 4-year-old boy who was killed, I want to say, in April. And police, the city we don't have a suspect. I think like 2 days after it happened, I was able to talk to his mom, her boyfriend, and the child's father all together, which, unfortunately you don't see a lot of times in many families, but I will be honest, in African-American households where parents who aren't together are still always cordial. And so, and to also have her current boyfriend, they were very kind and obviously very traumatized in that moment, and trusted me to literally sit down and ask them, what is going on? Like, where do we go from here? Someone just killed your child. And this is a 4-year-old. We can't tolerate that. And I left that interview and went home. I bawled my eyes out. It was just one of those things. I think people think we're these robots with the microphones, and I just couldn't handle it. And I think that that's fine, because if you're not moved by a 4-year-old being shot to death, then I'm not sure what makes a difference. But that will always, always be not only a defining moment, but just a moment for me. That's something that not only did I have an opportunity to shed light on, but that I just had to encounter, because if it affected me, I can't imagine what that family is going through. Yeah.
What do we do about it? Is anything shining through to you in your coverage? You mentioned you're doing a similar story right now that you're preparing. This is kind of off the topic of you,
right?
But is something just glaring that we can do for the violent situation in our city? And the thing is, it's not just our city,
right?
But it feels more frequent for some reason.
Well, yeah, feels and is, unfortunately. At this rate, I think crime is sort of my beat. I tend to do those stories often. We are well on our way to probably having one of the most violent years in Peoria. We are in November. I think we had like 22 or 23 homicides last year. I think we're at like 21 right now, if I'm wrong. And so we gotta, and it always happens around holidays.
Yeah.
I think that our Peoria Police Department does a fantastic job of canvassing and community police relations and trying to improve that historically. No one department, I think, can take that challenge on its own. It just has to happen over time. I wish there was more of a way that we could reach communities who are afraid to come forward with information, because I think that makes all the difference. Somebody knows who killed Jeremiah Ward. Someone knows who shot the last person in Peoria who passed away. I think, unfortunately, this code of loyalty and silence is stronger than the code of just justice. And if people knew, if they believed, okay, I'm going to give this tip and nobody's going to be able to point it back to me and there won't be any retaliation, I firmly believe we would have 1 trillion more homicides, murders, open cases solved, because people will be giving somebody sees these things, it doesn't just happen out of thin air. Half the shootings I cover in Peoria happen in broad daylight.
Yes.
So I think, I know we have some things in place. We got Crime Stoppers. There's a DJ's law that helps protect people who come forward. I just wish that maybe we could convince people that they work, Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right, on a lighter note.
Right, okay.
Craziest, now, I was going to ask you about the craziest thing that's happened to you on the air. I know one because you keep posting it on your Facebook page.
Yeah.
Maybe you've got one that even tops that. But first of all, the one where
I'm running out of Jesse's live. Yeah.
I could play that over and over and over again.
Oh, man.
Because you had to be wearing heels.
It was crazy. I had on heels. You heard me rushing up against the mic. So what happened is we have a stinger. So, when we go into weather, it's like, and it's about 7 seconds.
And you're supposed to get
and I'm supposed to, even if it means I have to duck down, I'm supposed to get out of the shot. I think we played the wrong stinger and it was 3 seconds. And so Jesse's on camera and I literally bolted, but I look like this giant bug just trying to get I feel like showing people those things lets them know we're human.
Absolutely.
TV's not perfect. It was a fun moment.
And you make Chuck Collins blooper tape. I mean, you were, wherever you may go, that will live on.
Yeah.
That makes me think, have you ever literally had to duck down and crawl out of a shot?
Once. I did, because at one time my heel was coming off and I was just like, this is not going to end well. So I just ducked down. And then once they take the graphics full, you don't see us on camera. So I just kind of go back. I always want to tell people there is so much that happens behind the scenes in a newscast. Just the other day, I was going live and they didn't have my feed up. So I'm in the field. I've got to turn on this backpack that feeds my signal. They are in my intro about to toss to me. And the producer has to make a decision. Okay, we don't have her. This is 1:30 of our 30-minute newscast. So the anchors have to read my script. And then literally in when they were going, Lauren Melendez is live, I popped up on screen. And I'm panicking. So what you don't see, I'm all composed and on air. I'm sweating. I'm hurrying up with the wires. It is bananas. Then that doesn't happen often, but it's never just okay, write the script, get the show produced, sit down, deliver the news, leave. It's not like that at all.
No, it isn't. Not in any of this.
No.
So what's your dream job? What do you want to do after we say goodbye to you at some point?
I would love to eat pizza for a living and never gain a pound.
I'll be your co-anchor.
If I could be what is it, Guy Fieri? My goodness. We always have him playing in the newsroom, and I'm like, man, what I wouldn't give to do that. I love journalism, so I think it's going to be a while before I bow out of this field. I would love to eventually end up home. That's the city that raised me. Just by luck, I grew up in Market 4, so it's a huge television market, and there's so much to do. Philly is like a melting pot. So to be able to come back home and bring all the skills that I've learned throughout the years would be fantastic. I think if I were to be off camera, I'd probably like to do something philanthropic. I love animals. If anyone knows me,
the cats.
Always posting about my cats. So I am a cat mom through and through. I own it. I will be one of those women who has 1 billion bags and newspapers and cats when I'm 45. We're not waiting until we're 70. That is going to be my future. I really would love to do something that allows people to capture and rescue or find homes for animals. I know that sounds cheesy, but if that were, if I could do that and I could just retire and just do something that I was just equally as passionate about, it'd be that.
Well, we're out of time, but I am so glad we had the chance to get to know each other, and we just let some other people watch.
Thank you so much, Scott. This is awesome.
You bet. Lauren Melendez from News 25. You can catch her all the time on Channel 25, doing great work and great stories. This has been Airplay. Remember, you can catch this on Peoria Life's web portal anytime, and their Facebook page, also their YouTube channel, and Peoria TV, which is channel 17 on the i3 broadband system. I'm Scott Wheeler from Super Hits WIRL, and we'll catch you next time on Airplay.
PeoriaLife.com.
This was fun. This is awesome.